Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the funeral service. We ask for those that have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating is Rabbi Shlomo Crandall.
Eishus Chayil miyimtza v'rachok mipnini michra botach lo ve'bala v'shalo lo yachsar. G'malaso tov v'lora kol yimei chayeha darshot semer ufishtim v'tas b'chefetz kapeha. Haisa kanios socher mimerchak tovi lachma v'takam be'olayla v'titenteref levesa v'chok l'naroseha. Zamma sadeh v'tikacheu mipri chapeh natakarem Chagra be'oz masnea v'ta'amez raseha tama ki tosachra lo yichbe balayla neira. Yadeha shilcha b'kishor v'chapeh tam chuvalech kapa parsa la'ani v'yadeha shilcha la'evion. Lo tira levesa mishala ki chovesa lavushanim. Marvadim asasala sheish v'agaman lavusha. Noda b'sha'arim bala b'shifto im zigne aretz. Sadin asasa v'timkar v'chagar nasna laknani, oz v'hadar levusha v'tishak liyom acharon. Pia pascha b'chachma v'saras chesed al leshona, Sophia halichos beisa v'lechem atzos lo sochel. Kamu v'nea v'yashua ba'ala v'yihalala. Rabos banos asu chayil v'at elis al kulana. Sheker hachein v'hevel hayofi, Isha yiras Adonai hitis-salal, Tnula mi priyadeha v'yahaluha, b'sha'ari maseha.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank all of you who are here so early on a Friday morning. We're doing it to accommodate two of our siblings who are in Israel, to make sure that they can be involved before Shabbos starts. Secondly, I look out here and it's nice to see that it's a pretty decent crowd. So, in today's world, so many people have smartphones, and if you have a smartphone, that usually means that you belong to some WhatsApp group. And one that we have for our siblings, all five of us, is a WhatsApp group for just the five of us that keeps us connected through good and bad, and that's because our mother taught us loyalty. So how does loyalty fit in with my mother? Well, she grew up just like a few 100,000 others in Chicago on the west side of the city, the old west side of Chicago, Jewry, which is the North Lawndale area. She lived on Ridgeway in the middle of the 16th and 1700s. Over there, between 16th and 18th, there's no 17th cutting through. That doesn't happen until west of Pulaski. So it was a long block, and they lived basically in the middle of it. If they wanted to go to shul on Shabbos, her father and she'd like to go with him to shul. She'd walk down the stairs, and they readily could have made a left, walked to the end of the block going south. At the corner by 18th was Anshe Matala. The one that you know in West Rogers was over there at that time. But instead, loyalty, and this is how she learned loyalty. Her father came from Pavlich, which is a small town about 100 kilometers or 60 miles southwest of Kiev, in the, depending on who you believe, the Ukraine or Russia. My Zadie was in the Russian army, not the Ukrainian army, but that was different in those days. So why did they go there? Because over there to the right, if they had then gone 11 half blocks east, that's like 5.5 normal blocks, they would have gone up to Christiana, what's called Christiana now, but in those days was called Turner. So it was affectionately, the shul over there was called the Turner Avenue shul. Officially, it was called Anshe Pavlich, because that was the name of the town. So in those days, that was where he had come from. In those days, it was all Landsmannschaft. There was all whatever group of people you belonged to. You had the Romanische or the Romanian congregation, you had Anshe Odessa, you had Mutala, there's a whole bunch of them. So through thick and thin, all types of weather, they would walk to, and to a little kid, it's not 5.5 blocks. She sees she's passing 11 blocks. And she would go dutifully with her father. So that was the loyalty that was taught. When my mother went to school, in those days, you didn't have that many options for Jewish day schools. So she went to Penn, which was a few blocks maybe to the west of her, a couple blocks. That was the grammar school. At the same time, 2 years younger was Kim Novak. I wonder whatever happened to her. She then would afterwards go to the Hebrew school. She went to a community one called Montefiore because Anshe Pavlich was too small to have their own Hebrew school afterwards. So when she went to high school, she would have to go a long distance to Marshall, which was by Adams and Kedzie. Adams over there is about I don't know, about 200 south or so, and she lived 1,600 south, and it was Kedzie was a few blocks east, so it was a trek. And then she'd have to turn around and go back to by Herzl, which was on Douglas or 14th Street, to I think Herzl School then had a high school in the afternoon. So she was dedicated to getting her Jewish education. And throughout her life, she was a very educated Jew. Later on, when Rabbi Chaim Ehrman, who was a great Talmud Chacham, was the rabbi at Beth Yitzchak, he had a class on Sunday mornings in Mesilas Yesharim. My mother went to that class. So it was all about my mother's upbringing. And at this point, I would like to close and thank a couple people who went out of their way to make my mother's life as comfortable as possible her last year and a half. One would be the Charlotte Cohn from Dobson Plaza. It's very Hamisha. This city needs to have fully kosher nursing homes. She and the other one, of course, we know is Buckingham by the Stearns. They both serve a tremendous purpose. And not only was Charlotte, but Kathy Singer, who was her assistant, was dutiful, and the staff was dutiful to helping my mother. There's 2 or 3 people who made an effort on a regular basis to visit my mother. One of my sister's close friends, Carol, I see there. We thank her very much. There's my sister's machatenis, Debbie Brown, and her husband, David, who, as my mother corrected me, because he would come there usually on Fridays and play a flute for her. And I says, oh, the flutist. And she goes, no, it's flautist. So we thank them. And of course, last but not necessarily least, is Rochelle, who owns the Halavi restaurant on Howard. She would visit my mother regularly and looked at her almost like an extra mother. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll let the next person say their thing.
Over 30 years ago, philosopher Robert Fulghum wrote an exceptionally popular book and credo. All I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten. I was luckier than most people. I didn't need to leave home to learn all I needed to know. Everything I needed to learn, I learned from my mother, Ruth Teren. What values and priorities did my mother teach me and my siblings? Family, faith, and fun were all essential to my mother's outlook on life. Probably nothing was more important than family. My mother's family was blended. My Bubby Marion, with one son, married my Zadie Simon, who had 3 grown children, obviously a second marriage for each of them. Together they had my mother Ruth, and 15 months later, her brother Sinclair. These 2 siblings had a very close bond all their lives, and my mother adored her brother. As the kids, the 2 of them, with Sinclair's best friend Perry, formed the Sinclair Ruth Perry Club, and they roamed the blocks of the Old West Side boulevards playing street games and baseball. My mother always told me, I don't have half-siblings. They're all my brothers and sisters. So every Pesach, we kids had to sit through an agonizing Seder with one of those brothers, who wasn't a half, and his wife to uphold her father's family tradition. Along with groaning about the imposed family gatherings, we also had a lot of fun as a family. Being of modest means, my parents' idea of a family outing was to get into the car with all 4 kids jockeying for their place, loading up on snacks, particularly crackers and peanut butter, and heading on the road, as singer Dinah Shore said, go see America. We would spend hours singing old favorites, and especially Chazanut, as my father was a Chazan. My mother's voice didn't measure up, which was a source of much laughter. My mother was a big sports fan. She watched all the Chicago teams. Late in life, sometimes the only distraction she had was to put on a Bears game. She was the pitcher at my 10-year-old son's baseball party at Devonshire Park. Her skills at yo-yo and paddleball amazed me. I did not inherit any of her talents. But what my mother did teach me was a love of learning. While other girls got toys and dolls for presents, I would get books. As I grew, the book's subject matter was of Tanakh, Jewish history, and Masorah. All of her life, my mother attended classes by rabbis she respected and learned from. It was just natural for me to follow my mother's quest for knowledge. In every shul my mother belonged to, she stood out as a special member. The joke was she opened the door along with the shamash on Shabbos morning. Everyone knew Ruth Teren and her makom, her place on the women's side. I remember one Purim when I was 8 years old, a rabbi, Rabbi Weiss, looked at the woman's side and said, "Where's Ruthie?" She needed a few extra minutes to get to the Megillah reading with my 3 other siblings, one of them being just 1 year old. She felt deeply devoted to her shul. For many, many years, she was the sisterhood president at Beis Yitzchak and did a terrific job. At the annual picnic, my mother literally peeled and fried hundreds of potatoes for the shul's Latke fundraiser. Well, I haven't emulated all of my mother's good qualities, but I saw them and I appreciated them. That is why I was luckier than most people.
Everyone always has a story how their mom is the best, and mine truly was. I learned how to treat my fellow human being. So many stories stand out in my mind. I remember sitting in a doctor's waiting room when I was a child, and there was a little kid crying nearby. My mother whipped out a lollipop for the child and calmed him down. Sitting in shul, my mother would help the older ladies find the pages in the siddur, always with patience. Every Shabbos, my mother would make the best chicken soup. Everyone says that, but my mother really made the best chicken soup with knedela. In upper state New York, One time when my family was living in upstate New York, excuse me, my mom schlepped up a big, I'm talking about big chicken to where we lived, for she was afraid there wouldn't be enough chicken to make her soup. But one thing really sticks out in my mind. This is the time when Rabbi Ryan was our rabbi. He asked my mom to help out a family who couldn't afford food for Shabbos. Every Friday, my mom would make a big bag of food, including halot, and the rabbi would pick it up and bring it to the family in need. She loved helping those people out. What a mitzvah, so pious. I really try and emulate her in her midos. My mom always ended a phone call with, "I love you." I do the same with my children, as they do the same with theirs. But the last few months, I would answer my mom when she said, "I love you." I always said, "I love you more." Mom, goodbye. I love you more.
Okay. I grew up in a loving, traditional religious home. Our parents instilled within us the values of family, derech eretz, hard work, kindness, and communal responsibility, lifelong lessons that were deeply ingrained within me. My mother was a deeply spiritual person. She couldn't get enough shiurim and divrei Torah, always learning and eager to expand her knowledge. In her later years, when her health began to fail, Rabbi Ehrman would phone my mother up before his lecture would begin. The community to healing group would meet like clockwork in her home, always a sefer in her hand. Larry often brought my mother to the library, and she could easily polish off 2 novels by the end of the week. In her earlier years, she had a particular passion for mysteries, but what really stands out in my memory is my mom's exceptional skill at crossword puzzles. I had very mixed emotions as I packed my bags on Aliyah. I was worried she would disapprove, but my mother was a very wise person and encouraged me
She
to
said to start
follow.
again, start again.
Oh,
You were muted. They can hear you now? You can hear now?
oh,
Start again.
oh. Okay, should I ask, can you hear me?
No, just start.
Okay. I grew up in a loving traditional religious home. Our parents instilled within us the values of family, derech eretz, hard work, kindness, and communal responsibility, lifelong lessons that were deeply ingrained within me. My mother was a deeply spiritual person. She couldn't get enough shiurim and divrei Torah, always learning and eager to expand her knowledge. In her later years, when her health began to fail, Rabbi Ehrman would phone my mother up before his lecture would begin. The community to healing group would meet like clockwork in her home, always a sefer in her hand. Larry often brought my mother to the library, and she could easily polish off 2 novels by the end of the week. In her earlier years, she had a particular passion for mysteries, but what really stands out in my memory is my mom's exceptional skill at crossword puzzles. I had very mixed emotions as I packed my bags on Aliyah. I was worried she would disapprove, but my mother was a very wise person and encouraged me to follow my path in life. She told me that she could not be prouder and instilled within me a deep sense of longing for Jerusalem and Eretz Israel. How I cried those first high holidays so very far away. She was a very devoted mom and Bobby, and my parents visited us often as they could. My early memories of my mom were of her whacking a softball out of the park and running the bases. She was a huge Cubs fan and other major sports such as football. My mom was involved in the PTA programs, and I remember one year she hit the pavement canning and she brought in the most money. As president of the Beth Yitzchak Shul, she organized and planned many events, including barbecuing hamburgers at our picnics and major fundraising for our shul, lovingly known as Rabbi Rhines. She was most often the first person to show up on a Shabbos morning and greet the Rav. Attending shul meant the world to her, particularly in her later years. It was one of her greatest enjoyments in life. What I learned from my mother was family, loyalty, optimism, the true meaning of kapara, devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, good deeds, and endurance, fighting until my last ounce of strength. These I learned from my mother, and so much more. Mom, you will forever be my mommy. Yehi zichra baruch.
Well, I might be repeating some things, but I have a prepared speech. So how do you do justice to nearly 94 years of life in a few words? Did you know that my mother was president of the Beis Yitzchak Sisterhood from 1977 to 1979? That during World War II, she translated letters from English to Yiddish so that the parents of overseas soldiers, their sons, that they could understand their messages. You've heard that she was a great athlete. As for myself, being the youngest sibling of 5, coming 8 years after the 4-pack that you heard of, although I'm blessed to be a grandparent myself, I will always be the baby of our family, the one who knew our parents for the shortest time. But my mother and I made up for that shortfall in spades. Until her final year, we spoke almost every day, 6 days a week, despite being continents apart. Since 1994, when we made Aliyah, I traveled from Israel to Chicago, transatlantic, nearly 200 times to visit my parents. We shared countless hours together, drives around the suburbs, Jewish music listening, sports games, family pictures, trips to Jewel. Shabbos was so special together, often just the two of us and with Larry. I'd like to just give the 3 traits that I think most defined my mother amongst what you've heard. One is resilience. My mom's inner strength was unmatched. As Larry said, she had a strong heart. She battled countless illnesses, endured setbacks, and always found a way to rise again. At times, I thought she would live forever. Secondly, her love for family and friends. Distance never diminished her love. She sat at her kitchen table and held court with phone call after phone call and genuine interest in each and for all. She cherished talks with her children and grandchildren and friends, always eager to hear the latest news and always so proud and encouraging. 3, her third trait is a fierce loyalty, as you've heard. Her hallmark of devotion to our father for 60 years until his death, to her parents, especially to her aging mother, to her children, her grandchildren, her lifelong friends, her neighbors, and even her caregivers. She protected and stood by her loved ones like a force of nature. And as you've heard, her Torah and faith was at her center of her existence. Back in the day, she had the key to Beis Yitzchak Shul and opened it on Shabbos morning even before the Gabe arrived. She attended the Torah Shiurim, as you heard, before davening. Eventually, when she could barely walk, she insisted on going to shul to hear Kriyas Torah, braving the Chicago winters with her walker, stopping along the way to catch her breath with oxygen tank in tow. When she could no longer leave home, the ladies brought the Tehillim group to her. She was loved by all who knew her. She was a tzedekis. So I say goodbye. I know this is the way of the world, yet it feels surreal. I'll miss you beyond words. I am very sorry that I didn't get to see you before you passed. I tried so hard to be a good son. Please forgive me. Moving my family to Israel 31 years ago was painful for you, and I know how much you missed us. I hope you understand now in Shamayim that we did it for the good of our family. To my siblings, we're without dad almost 16 years, and now without mom, we're orphans. At any age, that stings. We are the Teren siblings. As Larry said, we are a special breed raised by incredible parents. Their legacy will continue. Helene, thank you so much for your loving care for Mom, including hosting her at your home after her many setbacks. And a very special thanks to my brother Larry. Your devotion to Mom went above and beyond all measures. This special mitzvah of Kibbut Horim should bring you blessings of good health and merits in this world and in the next. Mom, thank you. Thank you for everything, for being a great mother to me, for raising me with Dad, alav v'shalom, and a great family. Rest in peace. Say hi from me to Dad, to your parents, to Jason, to Avi, to all of our family. You are deeply loved and will never be forgotten. Rachel Bas Yoshua Miriam, Zichrona Livracha, Tehei Nishmasa Tzura B'Tzura Chaim.
Larry, Helene, Susie, Chanie, and Moshe. I'm humbled to stand here. I think I've known your mom, I would say about 15, 18 years, something like that. And she really was a remarkable person. I was reflecting on the fact that this past week we celebrated Shavuos. Shavuos, as we all know, was Kabbalas HaTorah, was thunder, was lightning, was Gilui Shechina that never took place again, the likes of. But it's interesting that on one hand we have Gilui Shechina, never the likes of. On the other hand, we read the story of Megillas Rus, a story about a woman and her family and how she took care of them under adverse circumstances, how she took care of her aging mother-in-law. And I was thinking that there are two ways, two types of Gilui Shechina, if you like. One, the thunder and the lightning, and one of Rus, who was the hero, a Jewish heroine. And then I was thinking about Ruth. I was thinking about Mrs. Teren, without fanfare. There was no fanfare about her. No fanfare in her devotion to her mom. As her kids told me last night, she took care of her mother and it was never enough. I never did enough was the line that you used when we spoke yesterday. More and more and more. No fanfare in her marriage of a week short of 60 years to her husband. No fanfare in the Jewish education she gave not only herself, but her children. We take it for granted now. But shared with me last night was, imagine taking public transportation in Chicago to get to a Jewish school, to take buses, not school buses that pick you up, but take public transportation at the age of 10 years old, no fanfare to make sure that that's what her children would have. No fanfare in opening the shul, as was mentioned many a time, challenging Gabaim, Rabbanim, and Shamashim of who would be at shul first, going to shiurim in the love that she gave to her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. This is the story. This is the story of Ruth. This is the story of one woman. And interestingly, it was this one woman, Ruth, who was the great-grandmother of David HaMelech. That's how Klal Yisrael is built. And as Ruth, our matriarch, Ruth today leaves behind children, a brother in Eretz Yisrael, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, too many to count. She taught you well. As Moshe mentioned, Larry, she taught you how to take care of your mom. That's not something which we all could take for granted. Helene, you were there for your mom. Susie, you were there for your mom. Moshe, you mentioned 200 times to come back from Eretz Yisrael is not an easy trip. And you were there for your mom along with Chanie. I remember telling me about her trips to Israel and how you brought her, and how difficult it was for her, but how much she loved being there. My own kids had a special relationship with Mrs. Teren. My grandchildren loved visiting her. Right before I called my daughter today, who reminded me that she happened to be in Connecticut over a yontiv years ago, and she came to visit you and to see, and the smiles that have put on both of your faces. I have great memories, and I bid you to hold on to your memories, and she should continue to be a Melitz Yosher for us. We should learn from her actions, from her deeds, from her thought, from her fanfare of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu and raising a most beautiful family. Rachel bas Yeshua telech l'shalom, yanuach b'shalom, u'tehei nishmasa tzura b'tzor ha'chayim. Yehoshua. Please rise for Kamal.
El Malei Rachamim Shoichein Bameroimim Hametzei Menucha Nechaina Al Kanefei Hashchina B'malois kedoshim utahorim Kezoyhar harakiyah Mazahirim Es nishmas Rus ba Rachel bas Yoshua Shehalecha li'olama Vavur she'anu mispalelim Biyat haskaras nishmasa V'gan Eden Tehei menuchasa Lochein Bal harachamim Yastireho V'seiser k'nafav L'yolamim ויצרור בצרור החיים אס נשמסו אדינוי hu nachlaso v'sanuach ale mishkava b'shalom v'naimar amen.
Please be seated.
This concludes the funeral here at the chapel. The interment will take place at Waldheim Cemetery. For those who will be driving to the cemetery, we ask to have your headlights and hazard lights on while driving in procession and drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you. The family has several shiva times in different countries. All that information is on the service folder that you received when you arrived there or on the website that you joined to watch the live stream. The following individuals have been asked to act as pallbearers: David Lerner, David Braun, Seymour Gertz, Stan Gertz, Rabbi Jeremy Newman, Brad Helen, Menachem Lapidus, and Jordan Saltan. If we can all rise and have the pallbearers please come forward. Once we have left the chapel, we ask everybody to go immediately to their vehicles.